Namaskar, Shruti madam.
Namaskar.
Oh, yeah. We cannot see the video now. Yeah, now it's on. Professor Aloni, can we start now? As Shruti ma'am is here.
Please. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for joining, both of you, and welcome everybody. And at the beginning itself, let me say sorry. I apologize that we are starting a little late, and that too because the busy schedule of Dr. Shruti Tambe, but who has agreed to join us. And I know that she's busy in a conference in Ratnagiri. So let us start the program for today. क्रांतिज्योती महात्मा फुले यांच्या आज 195व्या जयंती निमित्त त्यांच्या स्मृतींना आणि त्यांच्या विचारांना अभिवादन करून आजच्या कार्यक्रमाला आपण सुरुवात करीत आहोत. कार्यक्रमाला थोडासा उशीर झालाय, त्याच्यामुळे माझं प्रस्तावना आणि इंट्रोडक्शन मी थोडंसं आवर्ते घेते, कारण की आपले दोन्ही आजचे जे टुडे वी हॅव टू इल्युमिनस स्पीकर्स अँड एव्हरीबडी इज वेटिंग टू लिसन टू देम. So I welcome everybody for this program, and let me begin with the introduction of the chairperson of today's program, Professor Y.S. Alone. Professor Alone is a professor in visual studies, and he's associated with School of Arts and Aesthetics in JNU. He has his PhD from JNU, and he has been awarded various fellowships. He was also nominated as ICCR chair, visiting professor in Shenzhen University, China. He is member of editorial board of Journal of South Asian Archaeology, Ancient Asia, and he has collaborated with various national and international institutes. He was also he has also published various books and articles in international journals. The introduction that Professor Alone has for us is basically Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar International Research Center will be always very thankful to him for the support that he has given to this center from the beginning in formulating the program of in Ambedkar studies and MA in development studies. So he has always been a guiding figure for the center. And on the center, last year that is in March 2020, we began with the postgraduate programs. And today we have more than 284 students who are pursuing different courses at the center. So we are really proud of the work that we are doing at the center, and we are very thankful for the guidance that you have given us. So today Professor Alone will be chairing this session. And now I also introduce the other personality over here who has agreed to give this talk on the contribution of Mahatma Phule. Professor Shruti Tambe is the head of Department of Sociology at Savitribai Phule Pune University. She is also Director of Euroculture program sponsored by Erasmus Mundus at the SPPU Pune. She has been active member of International Sociological Association, and she is the editor of the newsletter of RC47 and a member of their board. She has served as a member of managing committee for the Marathi Samajshastra Parishad. She has also served as the editor of Marathi Samajshastra Sanshodhan Patrika for 3 years. She has been editorial board of the newsletter of Indian Sociological Society. First of all, let me thank you, ma'am, for agreeing to talk here in spite of your very, very busy schedule. So without taking more time in introducing the program, let me directly invite, with the permission of the chair, Shruti Tambe madam, for delivering her talk. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, all of you, and I thank not just Professor Manisha Karne madam of the International Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Center, but also Honorable Dean of the faculty, Professor Kharat sir. And I'm indeed very pleased and privileged to have Professor Aloni as chair of this program. We have been co-travelers on the same path, and I'm sure it will be a mutually beneficial experience today. First of all, let me apologize for this delay. I am in the Mumbai University affiliated Gokte Zobrekar College today, participating in the Marathi Samajshastra Parishad. And unfortunately, the previous session got so delayed that I had to call Dean Sir and tell him that please give me some time to join all of you. So here I will, in brief, really flag some of the very important contributions of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and what we can learn and move ahead in the 21st century with the thoughts of Mahatma Phule. First of all, let me also wish all of you on the occasion of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule's birth anniversary today. And we know that in Maharashtra, all those who are taking position for social change, which is inclusive, which is justice oriented, and which is more oriented towards the future and not towards the past, all those people really celebrate this week from 11th of April to 14th of April, because two extremely important human beings who changed many different foundational aspects of human life, not just in Maharashtra, not just in India, but also across the globe. Their birth anniversaries fall in this week. And that is Jyotirao Phule and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, 11th and 14th. So this is in fact celebrated like a festival of 4 days. And every year, all of us participate in many important programs discussing the contributions by these Mahamanavs and what they did in terms of changing our own lives. Manisha madam, can I be slightly bilingual? I'm going to give some quotations as well. मी दोन्ही भाषा वापरणार आहे, मराठी आणि इंग्रजी, आणि काही तुम्हाला उद्धृत सुद्धा ऐकवणार आहे. Now, it is very important to remember that Mahatma Phule writes and works very actively in the colonial period. And today we are trying to learn from him and change the course of our society in the times of neo-colonialism or neoliberalism. At that time, the East India Company and later on the British government under the Queen were exploiting the natural resources from India. But not only that, we all know that at that time, it was also cultural exploitation, intellectual exploitation of Indians. But Mahatma Phule looks at this particular period with a complex perspective. He reminds us that in the Uttar Peshwai or the declining Peshwa rule period, it was really hard for women and those from the downtrodden castes to live like human beings, because the very dignity of men and women, whom Mahatma Phule very carefully always calls Stri Shudra Ati Shudra. He never kind of, conflates them together. He never slips into writing all humans or all men. Never ever. So today, even in the university structure, many times, even our university application formats, etc., are so patriarchal that I can tell you, अनेकदा जे अर्ज असतात तिथे शेवटी आपला विश्वासच लिहिलेलं असतं. कारण विद्यापीठाच्या क्षेत्रामध्ये अर्थातच स्त्री अपेक्षितच नसते. त्यामुळे आपला विश्वासू असतं. आणि अशा 21व्या शतकामध्ये असे अनुभव आम्हा स्त्रियांना येत असताना आपल्याला दिसेल की महात्मा फुले मात्र त्या काळामध्ये 19व्या शतकामध्ये अत्यंत जाणीवपूर्वक सजगपणे उल्लेख काय करतात, स्त्री, शूद्र, अतिशूद्र असा हायफनेटेड मेन्शन टू विमेन, बट ऑलवेज in a very, very purposeful manner, giving their due to women and their existence and their needs and their democratic rights. So महात्मा फुले त्या काळात आपल्याला असं सांगतात की कसं बघायचं ह्या परिस्थितीकडे. and he reminds us that though the British are really atrocious and the British are looting India, etc., the atrocities committed by Brahmanism and Brahmanical Hinduism in India are even worse. त्यामुळे फुलेंच्या लिखाणामध्ये कायम असं आपल्याला दिसतं की शेटजी आणि भटजी यांच्या शोषणाकडे आपण लक्ष द्यायला हवं. The economic exploitation by the moneylenders and the trading classes and the cultural and religious exploitation by the Brahmins are two sides of the same coin of exploitation that Indian society really thrusts upon the downtrodden castes, the lower castes, and the Bahujans. And hence he says that we are in modern period. Modernity has been inaugurated in the world, and all humans are equal. And if it is so, then we should fight for our rights. He received the inspiration for all of this, as we all know, from the Scottish missionary school where he was going, and he had a number of different, very interesting collaborators and colleagues with whom he had continuous dialogue. एक लक्षात घ्यायला हवं की आपण पुणं म्हटलं की कर्मठ ब्राह्मणी असं म्हणतोच, पण तिथे त्या काळामध्ये बदलाचे वारे पण वाहत होते आणि अनेक वेगवेगळे प्रवाह आधुनिकतेचे त्या ठिकाणी कार्यरत होते. So we find Phule interacting with the Scottish missionaries. We find Mahatma Phule reading a lot of latest literature from US in those days, from Europe of those days. He was reading, for example, Mills and of course works on slavery, etc. But he was also debating with his Brahmin collaborators / conflicting people also. He was also continuously in dialogue with Muslims around him. And the kind of modern world that Phule lives in and wants to inaugurate, and he actually inaugurates it, is of various different caste groups, various different religious communities, various classes, and there is an open debate and dialogue amongst them. आज कधी कधी आपल्याला वाटतं की आपण सगळे वेगवेगळ्या जाती धर्माचे लोक विद्यापीठांमध्ये किंवा विविध ठिकाणी एकत्र आहोत खरे, परंतु चुकतंय ते चुकतंय आणि पटत नाही ते पटत नाही हे सांगण्याचा मोकळेपणा राहिलेला नसल्यामुळे अनेकदा पॉलिटिकली करेक्ट खोटं पण बोललं जातं. मला हे मुद्दाम सांगायला आवडेल की फुल्यांनी फार स्पष्टपणे महात्मा ज्योतिराव फुल्यांनी न्यायाधीश तेव्हाचे जे होते रानडे, न्यायमूर्ती रानडे यांच्या बरोबरचे मतभेद अत्यंत स्पष्टपणे व्यक्त केलेले आहेत, परंतु वैयक्तिक पातळीवरती कटुता किंवा दुश्मनी अशी कधीही नव्हती. त्यामुळे महात्मा फुल्यांची जी आधुनिकता आहे ती आधुनिकता भारतातल्या विषमता संपवून बघणारी आणि युरोपातल्या आधुनिकतेमधला जो भांडवली विकासातून येणारा शोषणाचा मुद्दा आहे तो तोडून काढणारी अशी एक नवी आधुनिकता ते आपल्या समोर ठेवत आहेत. It is neither European modernity nor a very indigenous Indian format of modernity, but he comes up with very original thinking about what should new society look like, what should future of India be, and what kind of humanity are we really looking forward to. As I said earlier, Phule comes from a caste where he has to experience exploitation, he has to experience humiliation, he has to experience subordination, but he's determined to change the system. And I have titled my presentation today as Mahatma Phule, an invitation to decolonize knowledge. And I want to really, first of all, flag in front of you some of the basic things that actually everyone knows, but I would like us to remember today in honor of Mahatma Jyotirao Phule. And what are those important contributions of this great person? And then I would suggest why I think that it is an invitation to decolonize knowledges in the 21st century. So first of all, I would argue that Phule was someone who never accepted, who never ever accepted subordination on the basis of caste. And he was a rebel, but he was not a reformer. Many times he's misunderstood as a reformer. I argue, and many others have already written about it, of course, but I want to reiterate today, he is a revolutionary and not a reformer. He is a revolutionary in the sense he does not accept unjust system. He wants to change it in totality. And you might be aware that Professor G.P. Deshpande, in his book on Phule, argues that Mahatma Phule is a system builder. Because as a revolutionary, he is not only talking about rejecting what is there, but he is also talking about what should be. And he creates the alternatives. And therefore, he was a system builder. He talks about economic exploitation of the peasantry in Maharashtra, but then he also meets the Queen's representatives and gives a declaration about what should be done by the government. If you remember, for the Great Felicitation Program, he goes in torn clothes, धनगराची घोंगडी आणि फाटकं एक जुनं मुंडासं आणि फाटकी कुर्ती घालून ते जातात आणि ते सांगतात या भारतातल्या छोट्या शेतकऱ्यांची परिस्थिती अशी दैन्याची आहे आणि याच्यासाठी तुम्ही काय करणार ते सांगा. So he doesn't really accept that the Queen's rule is the rule of law or the rule of justice. And he, in fact, argues that urgent attention to issues of justice is needed. And he also gives a formula for it. For example, he talks about the wrong drafting of the Forest Act. And he says, why is the British government arresting small peasants and harassing them over forest produce? Why the British government is passing unjust laws in a unilateral way and criminalizing the tribals of India, who are the custodians of the natural resources and the bounties of nature in India. So the first argument that I would make is he was a revolutionary, but his revolution was not just about negating the Brahmanical Hindu framework at the social level, but he was also criticizing the financial exploitation, the economic exploitation, and the depletion of resources because of the Peshwa rule, because of the feudal rule, and also the capitalist rule. So you find that he is also aware that everything initiated by the Queen is not very, very positive. If you remember, when Macaulay's minutes are introduced, he goes and gives his declaration to the Hunter Commission also. So he is following, and that's my second argument. He is an institution builder, and he is someone who believes in democratic protocols and in fact sets protocols for our generation also to study and to follow. So he gives his own arguments in front of the Hunter Commission, arguing that we have to have an educational system in India which will facilitate emancipation of Stri, Shudra, Ati Shudra, and not just go with creating clerks to suit the expansion of British imperialism. ब्रिटिशांच्या भांडवली ज्या काय एकूण कार्यक्रम पत्रिका आणि जो काय दृष्टिकोन आणि भविष्याचा आराखडा आहे त्याचे हस्तक म्हणून भारतीयांनी ग्रॅज्युएट होऊन नोकऱ्या कराव्यात आणि क्लेरिकल कामं करावीत आणि भांडवलशाहीचा प्रसार करावा, हे काही त्यांना मान्य नाहीये. त्या विरुद्ध फुले बोलतात आणि शिक्षण कशासाठी हा महत्वाचा प्रश्न आपल्या समोर उभा करतात. आणि हा एक महत्वाचा माझ्या व्याख्यानाच्या दुसऱ्या भागामध्ये अजेंडा सुद्धा मी निश्चितपणे घेणार आहे. एक आपण लक्षात ठेवूया की हा काळ असा आहे की महाराष्ट्रामध्ये दुष्काळामागनं दुष्काळ आहे. महाराष्ट्रामध्ये बेबंदशाही माजलेली आहे आणि ब्रिटिश आल्यावरती थोड्या तरी प्रमाणामध्ये लॉ अँड ऑर्डरचे प्रश्न सुटतायत, थोडा तरी कायदा प्रस्थापनेचा मुद्दा येतोय. दलितांच्या वरचे जे अत्यंत तीव्र अत्याचार मध्ययुगामध्ये मराठा रूल आणि पेशवाईमध्ये कळसाला पोचले होते, ज्याचं वर्णन लोकहितवादींसारख्यांनी त्यांच्या लिखाणामध्ये केलेलं आहे, त्याला आता कुठल्या तरी प्रकारे एक नियंत्रण लावलं जात आहे. आणि त्यामुळे आपल्याला असं दिसतं की फुले लिहितात आणि बोलतात ते संशोधनाअंती बोलतात. त्यामुळे शेतकऱ्यांच्या स्थितीविषयी इशारा या पुस्तिकेच्या बाबतीमध्ये आपण जर सांगायचं तर इशारा या पुस्तिकेमध्ये काय करतात फुले, तर फुले रानड्यांनी त्या सुमाराला लिहिलेल्या शेतीची स्थिती या व्याख्यानावरती आपली प्रतिक्रिया देतात. आणि त्यामुळे ते म्हणतात की एक मी कोटेशन वाचतेय, यांच्या एका तरी ब्राह्मणाच्या कुटुंबातील बायका मुलास आम्हा शूद्र शेतकऱ्यांच्या बायका मुलांसारखे उन्हात अनात उपाशी तपाशी शेती कामे करण्याचा इंगा माहित आहे काय? या सर्व भट ब्राह्मणातील एकाने तरी सोनखताच्या पाट्या वाहून झाडांच्या खोड्याशी टाकल्या आहेत काय? And he there also talks about the horrible exploitation, an exploitation not just of your financial emoluments, but even cultural exploitation of dignity as a human being of men and women who had to work in inhuman conditions during those times. And he therefore talks about the problems of the peasants, the problems of the tribals, the problems of the castes who were not allowed to enter the entire arena of education. And he is talking about women of all castes in terms of their subordination, exploitation, and their again inhuman treatment. स्त्रियांच्या विषयी विशेषतः मला आपल्याला हे सांगण्यासाठी महत्वाचं वाटतं की जेव्हा कुळंबिणींविषयीचे 13 अखंड फुले लिहितात, तेव्हा कुळंबिणींवरच्या अखंडामध्ये ते स्त्री म्हणून होणारं शोषण, बाई म्हणून होणारं शोषण, बाईपणाचे सगळे दाहक अनुभव आणि त्याच्या बरोबरच होणारं कनिष्ठ जातीय बाई म्हणून होणारं शोषण आणि तिसरं आर्थिक शोषण, अशा शोषणाच्या बारीक बारीक छटा सुद्धा उलगडून दाखवतात. So he's not only talking about the exploitation on the basis of your class, but he is definitely telling us that how the dignity of humans is in fact really stolen and taken away. And that is the contribution of Mahatma Phule. The next thing that I would like to hear very briefly flag and talk about is the way Phule creates different personalities who later on led Maharashtra and led India in different ways. So I would like to talk about definitely a very important social congregation, establishment of a new religious cult in fact, but the cult which is not really creating new gods, but talking about nirmik, in a way an abstract principle, that guides the entire world. Then he also talks about he in fact teaches and trains Tarabai Shinde, who writes a book called Stri Purush Tulana. चांगल्या शिक्षकाचा गुणधर्म काय, तर त्याचे शिष्य असे झाले पाहिजे की ते त्याच्या बरेच पुढे जातील आणि ते विविध क्षेत्रामध्ये चिकित्सक प्रश्न विचारतील, महत्वाचे मार्मिक प्रश्न उभे करतील, असे प्रश्न की ज्याच्या विषयीचा अभ्यास पुढची अनेक दशकं चालेल. शतक सुद्धा. आणि ताराबाई शिंदे स्त्री पुरुष तुलनेविषयी जे लिहितात तो सगळाच एक पूर्ण भाग मी एका वेगळ्या प्रतिपादनात घेणार आहे. And that is another contribution by Phule. Phule, in a very interesting way, makes India think about women's sexuality and sexual control over bodies by Brahmanical patriarchy. काय प्रकारे ताराबाई शिंदेंनी का पुस्तक लिहिलं, तर त्या काळामध्ये बालविवाह होत होते ब्राह्मण स्त्रियांचे, मराठा स्त्रियांची लग्न होत नव्हती जर मुली शिकलेल्या असल्या तर, आणि बहुजन समाजामध्ये मात्र त्या मानाने, ज्याला आज आपण ओबीसी आणि एससी आणि एसटी म्हणतो, तिथे त्या मानाने मात्र विधवा एखादी झाली तर पुनर्विवाह किंवा काडीमोड होऊन दुसरा विवाह समूहाच्या संमतीने होऊ शकत होता. अर्थात कनिष्ठ जातीतल्या स्त्रीचं लैंगिक शोषण वरिष्ठ जातीचे पुरुष करत होते, हा त्याचा अजून एक अत्यंत भयानक पदरही आहे. परंतु महात्मा फुले इथे काय आपलं लक्ष वेधतात, तर अशा बालविधवा झालेल्या किंवा लग्न होत नाहीये म्हणून प्रौढ कुमारिका असलेल्या ज्या स्त्रिया होत्या, त्यांच्या बाबतीमध्ये अनेकदा लैंगिक संबंधामधनं गरोदर राहण्याची वेळ यायची. आणि अशी एक केस तेव्हा प्रचंड गाजलेली होती की त्या स्त्रीला अशा विवाह बाह्य एका संबंधामधनं मूल झालं आणि अर्थातच त्या पुरुषाचं नाव पुरुष सत्ताक समाजामुळे, ब्राह्मणी पितृसत्तेमुळे बाहेरही आलं नाही, आणि त्या स्त्रीनं मात्र त्या जन्माला आलेल्या बालकाचा खून केला म्हणून ब्रिटिश पोलिसांनी तिला पकडलं आणि तिच्यावरती खटला चालू होता आणि मग तिला फाशीची शिक्षा झाली. ह्या घटनेनंतर ताराबाई पुस्तक लिहितात की ह्यात गुन्हा कोणाचा, का ह्या बाईला तुम्ही फाशीची शिक्षा देताय, तिला गर्भधारणा का झाली, तिला कुठल्या प्रकारच्या शोषणामधनं हे सगळं घडलं, आणि हे सगळं झाल्यानंतर पुरुषाला काहीच न होता ह्या बाईला का ते बाळ मारावं लागलं, ह्यात ती कैदाशीण कशी ठरते, तिची काय सामाजिक पातळीवरची, धार्मिक आणि सांस्कृतिक पातळीवरची पूर्ण तिच्या पुढचे पेच आणि कोंडी आहे, त्याला तोंड कोणी फोडायचं. आणि ज्योतिबांची शिष्या असल्यामुळे धाडसानं एक छोटा निबंध स्त्री पुरुष तुलना नावाचा लिहून त्यात ह्या लैंगिकतेच्या मुद्द्याला, आम्ही माणूस आहोत, आमच्या अस्तित्वाचा अर्थ केवळ लैंगिक नाही, असं एक धारदार प्रतिपादन ताराबाई शिंदे, विचार करा, 19व्या शतकाच्या शेवटी करतात आणि ते पुस्तक छापलं जातं. सत्यशोधक समाजाशी संबंधित त्यांचे वडील आहेत, ते ब्रिटिश सरकारच्या चाकरीतले मोठे अंमलदार आहेत, आणि ही स्त्री उघडपणाने हे सगळं लिहिते आणि ते छापलं जातं, आणि त्या मागे फुले आपल्या अख्ख्या सामाजिक पुण्याईनिशी उभे राहतात. So he is a stalwart who also supports these causes. फुल्यांनी तो निबंध लिहिला नाही, ताराबाईंनी लिहिलाय, पण फुले त्यांच्या पाठीशी उभे राहतात आणि त्याला एक प्रकारची एक समर्थन, एक तात्विक समर्थन आणि एक पूर्णपणे त्याचा प्रसार होईल याच्यासाठीच पूर्ण त्याला आधार देतात. त्याचबरोबर मुक्ता साळवे तुम्ही जर बघितली, मुक्ता साळवेचा निबंध जो आहे की मांगा महारांचं जिणं पुण्यामध्ये काय आणि आमचं शिक्षण किती अवघड आहे, तुमच्या शाळांमधनं आम्ही कायम वगळले गेलो आणि आता शाळात जरी आलो तरी आमची घरची परिस्थिती काय. त्यामुळे वंचनेच्या अनेक पदरांचा उल्लेख एका छोट्या शाळकरी मुलीनी, जिच्या वयाविषयी थोडस संशोधकांमध्ये दुमत आहे, परंतु ते 10 वर्ष असू दे किंवा 14 वर्ष असू दे, तरीही त्या काळात 14 वर्षाच्या मुलीने असा निबंध लिहिणं हे सुद्धा जागतिक आश्चर्य मानलं पाहिजे. भारतातली पितृसत्ता, भारतातली जातीय विषमता, भारतातलं दारिद्र्य लक्षात घेता. काय म्हणते ही मुलगी, तर ही पुन्हा ताराबाई काय आणि ही मुलगी काय, मानवी प्रतिष्ठेचा मुद्दा करतात. ह्युमन डिग्निटी इज ॲट स्टेक. इफ वी आर इन मॉडर्न पिरियड, if we think that the British have come here and now a new era will start, then our human dignity should be ensured. This argument is extremely important, and Phule is the one who helps articulate these kinds of aspirations amongst various communities and various classes. सावित्रीबाईंचं स्वतःचं उदाहरण आपण बघा. सावित्रीबाई ज्या पार्श्वभूमीतनं येतात आणि शेवटाला त्या कुठपर्यंत एक प्रवास करतात तो तुम्ही पाहिलात तर. सो आणि दुसरं, इन हिज ओन लाईफ फुले कम्स अक्रॉस अ ब्राह्मीण वुमन who is trying to commit suicide because she's pregnant, again out of wedlock. She's a widow and she's pregnant and she wants to kill herself. Phule brings her home and says, you are my sister. It's not your fault. Sexual reproduction is an act where male and female both are involved. Why should you consider yourself as a criminal? Don't die. I'm with you. Brings her home and gives dignity and respect to that woman. And after the child is born, keeps the child in his own house and tells the sister, he calls her sister and tells her, you can go back in human society. And he argues in that orthodox Pune, this is about a Brahmin woman. And he says, we are humans in modern period. We should respect right to life and right to dignity. Obviously, in those days, the terminology of rights approach was not there, but Phule inaugurates it. And this is what I want to argue. And connected with it is an argument that regarding sexuality, he has extremely revolutionary views. He himself cannot have a child, and his family tells him to remarry with another woman, deserting Savitri. And what does he say? He says, I would marry if you are ready to marry Savitri to another man parallel to my second marriage. Because I don't know whether the childlessness is because of me or because of her. And if you're ready for that, then only I'll marry again. So this is my last point of my first part of the speech. The personal and the political, the personal and the private, the private and the public are not divorced from each other in Phule's writings and Phule's life. Whatever he argued in his private life, the same arguments he extended in the public life as well. And therefore you will find when Pandita Ramabai, an excellent Sanskrit scholar, an excellent scholar who was well-read, who knew many global languages, who had traveled a lot, and when she was criticized and attacked in Pune by the Orthodox Pandits, Phule, husband and wife, the couple, supported her like anything. They, in fact, felicitated her. They supported her. Then she had embraced Christianity. There were all kinds of allegations against her. And Phule is completely with her. And this is another aspect of Phule. And that I feel is extremely important for all of us today, which is in times of extreme, dissatisfaction, extreme kinds of disagreements, what do you do with people? And today we find that many times people cross off someone permanently. एखाद्या बाबतीत वादविवाद झाला का तात्विक मतभेद झाले एखाद्या मुद्द्यावर, जातीचा मुद्दा आहे, धर्माचा मुद्दा आहे, लिंगभावाचा मुद्दा आहे, काय करायचं? And I think we all can learn about it in today's very, very polarized times. Yesterday itself in JNU, students have been attacked by a particular students' union for eating non-vegetarian food on a certain day. आपल्याला माहिती आहे भारतात इतक्या जाती आणि इतके धर्म आहेत, सगळ्यांच्या खानपानाच्या, नेसण्याच्या पद्धती वेगळ्या आहेत. यावरून अटॅक करणं, ब्लडशेड होणं, रक्तपात होणं कॅम्पसेस मध्ये हे लज्जास्पद आहे. पण आता पोलरायझेशन अशा अवस्थेला पोहोचलंय की ह्या गोष्टी सारख्या आपल्याला दिसतात. आणि अशा वेळेला फुलेंना आठवणं आणि समजून घेणं अत्यंत महत्वाचं असणार आहे. का बरं? तर फुलेंचे वादविवाद आहेत रानडेंबरोबर अनेक कारणांनी. जस्टिस रानडे remarries with a young girl and Phule writes him a letter condemning that child marriage. He says, you are a justice in the British service. You should set examples. You should not do this. Again, sexuality and control over women is the issue there. Secondly, Ranade starts Granthakar Sabha and invites Phule, and Phule declines and says that your clique is Brahmanical. And I don't want to participate because I don't think that your clique is really trying to further the interests of entire humanity. And I'm concerned about entire humanity. No exclusion permitted. Second time. There are many other occasions where Phule and Justice Ranade, that is two different trajectories in the history of colonial Maharashtra, pro-change in the Indian social system, who want to change it for the better, there is a clash. But when Justice Ranade and others want to invite Swami Dayanand Saraswati in Pune and want to felicitate him, the Orthodox Brahmins declare that they will attack him, and Justice Ranade requests Phule to help. And there you go, Mahatma Phule, along with Lahuji Vastad, the gymnasium that Lahuji Vastad had, Phule comes out on the street with 250 very good athletes and very good, bodybuilders to protect Swami Dayanand Saraswati against the onslaught of the Orthodox. मला असं वाटतं की आजच्या काळात जेव्हा फुल्यांनी वापरलेले शब्द होते ब्राह्मणशाही, आठवत असेल तुम्हाला, असा एक शब्द ते वापरतात. आज सुद्धा एकीकडे ब्राह्मणशाही, भांडवलशाही या दोन्हीचा अशा काही भयंकर प्रमाणामध्ये ऑनस्लॉट आपल्यावर येतोय, त्या काळामध्ये फुलेंचा हा विवेक आपल्याला समजून घ्यायला पाहिजे. जस्टिस रानडेंना पत्र लिहून ते जाहीरपणे प्रश्न विचारतात, पण म्हणून रानडेंना ते नापास करत नाही. रानडेंबरोबर भांडणासाठी का होईना पण संवाद जारी आहे. आणि जेव्हा ऑर्थोडॉक्स शक्ती ह्या अटॅक करतायत रानड्यांवर, तेव्हा फुले आपल्या सगळ्या सामाजिक स्टँडिंग सकट तिथे उभे राहतात. So the argument that I would make here is the position that you take against atrocities, the position that you take against exploitation, against humiliation of the downtrodden, the lower caste, the lower classes, the women, is very clear. But in everyday life, in important, on important occasions, Phule as a strategy would definitely take some decisions that are quite surprising for many people. The third personality I forgot when I spoke about Tarabai Shinde and Mukta Salve is Narayan Meghaji Lokhande, Phule's collaborator, who starts the first union in India, in Mumbai, who starts many different things. He's the pioneer in terms of many different things. Today, you and me are enjoying Sunday as a holiday thanks to Narayan Meghaji Lokhande's efforts with the British government, the negotiations that he led. त्यामुळे अशा प्रकारची एक संस्थात्मक बांधणी आणि चिकित्सक प्रश्न विचारणारे, राजकीय स्पष्ट भूमिका घेणारे लोक फुल्यांनी निर्माण केले. हा फुल्यांचा आपल्याला अतिशय मोठा एक योगदानाचा भाग दिसतो. Now I'll come to the second part of my presentation today, and I'm sure we will all learn a lot from Professor Aloni's comments as a chair later on. And that part is, I find that entire repertoire of Phule's writing and his actions is an invitation for all of us for decolonizing knowledge. Phule is the first one who glorifies and worships Shivaji. शिवाजी महाराजांचा पहिला पवाडा हा फुल्यांनी लिहिला. रायगडावर जाऊन कचऱ्यात पडलेली घाण, झुडपं आणि कचरा पडलेली महाराजांची समाधी त्यांनी स्वच्छ केली आणि शिवाजी खऱ्या अर्थाने पुन्हा एकदा आधुनिक महाराष्ट्राला त्याची ओळख करून दिली, ती ज्योतिराव फुल्यांनी. फुल्यांनी जातीपातीच्या कोत्या भिंतीच्या पलीकडे न्यायाचं एक नवं व्याकरण इथे निर्माण केलं. He redefines social justice in the context of India with a new vocabulary. He reminds us about the glorious past, where he remembers, as I told you right now, Tukaram. He remembers Kabir. He remembers Shivaji Maharaj. He remembers the contributions of so-called illiterate men and women who have composed a lot of poetry against exploitation by the caste system, patriarchy, exploitation by the money lenders, village after village, and so on. And he recreates the mythology anew. आज जेव्हा आपण म्हणतो की ब्रिटिशांच्या वसाहतवादी ज्ञानातनं आपल्याला मुक्ती मिळवायची, आपल्याला नवं काहीतरी सुरू करायचंय, तेव्हा आपली अनेकदा चूक अशी होते की ब्रिटिशांचं नाकारायचंय म्हणजे नव्याने काय लिहायचं आणि तो इतिहास कोणता. सो अनफॉर्च्युनेटली द पॉप्युलर ट्रेंड टुडे इन इंडिया इज गो बॅक टू वेदास. सगळं काही वेदांपर्यंत नेऊन ठेवायचं आणि इतिहासाचं पुनर्लेखन केलं पाहिजे असं म्हणायचं. Following Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, I argue that this is a slippery path. आर्य हे भारतातले मूळ होते आणि आर्यच श्रेष्ठ आहे, वंशश्रेष्ठत्वाचा सिद्धांत हे सगळं आधुनिक काळाच्या विरोधी आहे, ह्युमन राईट्सच्या विरोधी आहे. And we should remember, yes, we need to rewrite history. We need to recreate the foundations of knowledge for India simply because before the British came, we had a very diverse knowledge tradition in India. We had multiple knowledge traditions in India. आपल्याकडे बौद्ध धर्मापासनं आणि बुद्धांच्या शिकवणुकीपासनं वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारची एक ज्ञानाची धारा आपल्याला दिसते. आपल्याला चार्वाका सारखा एक निरीश्वरवादी हिंदू दर्शनामध्येच एक वेगळा विचार मांडणारा एक प्रवाह पूर्ण दिसतो. जैनांच्या रूपाने एक वेगळी विचारसरणी आणि ज्ञानाची मूलतत्व आपल्याला मिळतात. भारतामधले जे जरावा आयलंड मध्ये सापडलेली आपली पहिली आई, जी इजिप्त मधनं कदाचित आपल्या इथे आली असावी, भारतीय द्वीपकल्पाची सुरुवात जी जरावा अंदमान आयलंड्स मधली मानली जाते, स्त्री, असे जे सर्व आदिम समूह भारतभर पसरलेले आहेत, त्या आदिम समूहांच्या ज्ञान परंपरा, ज्यांना कदाचित नावं पण नाहीयेत, अशा त्या ज्ञान परंपरा आहेत. Multiple knowledge traditions we have, and there is great enriching pluralism in the knowledge traditions of India. Different racial groups came to India and they intermingled. पावित्र्याच्या नावाखाली कोणीही त्यातलं वेगळं राहिलं हे आर्ग्युमेंट आपण करता कामा नये. Anthropologically speaking, भारतामध्ये there is no pure race and there is no pure community group which can really claim that we are the original, etc., etc. Bharat हे खऱ्या अर्थाने melting pot of various cultures. Different racial groups came, different kinds of migrations happened in India. And the intermixtures have made this country what it is today, a very rich, culturally diverse, linguistically diverse, fantastic, ecologically also place. का लोक आले इतके इथे? त्याच्याकडे सतत आपण निगेटिव्हली बघायचं कारण नाहीये. आपण फार बोलचट होतो इथे, सारखे कसे आक्रमण झालं असं नाहीये. This was a beautiful land. People wanted to come here and stabilize. This was extremely fertile land culturally also. आज तुम्हाला माहिती आहे का नाही मला कल्पना नाही, पण युनानी मेडिसिनचे आपण टेंट बघतो कुठे कुठे. काय आहे युनानी मेडिसिन? ग्रीक मेडिसिन. Because the Greeks had settled in India. Under Emperor Ashoka, we know that there was a Greek colony. And of course, Professor Aloni is an expert in that field. He would shed more light. But the kind of intermixtures we had, purity chi kalpana hasyaspad hai. And Phule reminds us of these multicultural origins that all of us, all Indians have. How does he do it? By recreating mythology. वामन आणि बळीचं मिथक ज्या प्रकारे फुले पुन्हा रचतात, rewriting of the mythology that Phule does, he reminds us of the waves of migrations and the kinds of exploitations that happened here, the kind of cheating that went into subordinating and conquering different tribal groups and small local communities, and the way the bulldozing authority, the bulldozing cultural paradigms came to India and established themselves with brutality. And therefore, by looking at Phule, by learning from Phule, we can actually decolonize knowledges today. By claiming that the multiple ethnic communities in India have the great resources of helping us to go back to create knowledge. ब्रिटिशांनी दिलेलं ज्ञान ओलांडून पुन्हा एकदा बहुविध ज्ञानाचे जे प्रवाह भारतातले आहेत ते जिवंत करून आपल्याला decolonizing knowledge करता येईल. The way even sociology, for that matter, came to India was through British anthropology. And why did it come here? Because they wanted to definitely colonize and control India. And that is why sociology, anthropology, archaeology all came to India. Why Indology came? Why Sanskrit was glorified so much wrongly? It was one of the many languages, and we know Pali, Ardhamagadi, Nagari, Paishachi, the richness of those is really neglected. So if we want to take Phule very seriously, Mahatma Phulenna गांभीर्यानं घेऊन जर आपल्याला विद्यापीठीय ज्ञानाच्या पुनर्रचनेचा कार्यक्रम घ्यायचा असेल तर आपल्याला ब्राह्मण्याचं ओझं फेकावं लागेल. And when I say Brahmanya, I would remind you, Mahatma Phule differentiated between Brahmin by birth and Brahmanya as a category. Anyone who takes purity of any kind as the dominant principle is Brahman in Phule's definition. We all know that Phule had many collaborators who were by birth Brahmin, but who were ostracized by the Brahmins in Pune for helping out, Pandita Ramabai or Mahatma Phule or the likes. So, मला दोन गोष्टी शेवटी सांगायच्या आहेत. The agenda for decolonizing knowledge is not just about wiping away everything that came with the British and going back to the Aryan history, but it's about complicating our understanding of history itself. It is not to say that the dominant religious community in India today will tell us what is our history and what is our future. But decolonizing knowledge following Phule means listening to all the voices, the dominant, the not so dominant, and the exploited. All voices need to be heard. And every voice should be acknowledged and given the dignity of being an equal partner in the dream of creating a beautiful future India. The future of India is not about uniformity and standardization, one color, one religion, one caste, one way of thinking. It is about multiplicity of languages, communities, thinking patterns, regional cuisines, ethnomedicine, ethnoecology, and kind of bringing all of that together is what should be the agenda for us to decolonize knowledges. Phule never went with the notion of purity, the purity of race, the purity of language, the purity of religion. And you might remember, I'm sure all of us know that Krista Muhammada Manga Brahmanasi is the famous line from his Abhanga, Akhanda as he called it. And what is that Akhanda all about? He really gives his agenda for a new India. Krista Muhammad Manga Brahman coming together will really strengthen the future of democracy in this country. Right now, we are exactly going in another direction. We are in a very polarized world, and as many sociologists have told us, globalization process itself has two faces. It's a Janus-faced existence. One side of globalization is so-called internationalization, so-called, borderless world, and so on. And the other side of the face is celebrating identities, and with the help of those identities, fragmenting the social fabric. And today we find exactly this happening. With the use of technology, more and more fissures are being created. We thought that social media would be an enabling and emancipating medium. But what has happened is, using the bots and using softwares like Pegasus, there is spying happening, there's surveillance happening, there's control on our subconscious mind happening. And people in modern period, Phule tells us, Manus म्हणून जगा. As a thinking entity, we should look at ourselves as a human being. We are turning exactly backwards, and we are going towards a gang kind of existence. स्वतंत्र विचारी माणसाऐवजी आपण हिंसक झुंडी व्हायला लागलेलो आहोत. मला वाटतंय गेल्या काही दिवसातल्या बातम्या जर तुम्ही आठवल्यात तर तुम्हाला कळेल की महात्मा फुल्यांचं स्वप्न बहुजन, स्त्री, शूद्र, अतिशूद्र यांनी शिक्षण घ्यावं आणि विचार करून नवा समाज घडवावा हे होतं. त्याऐवजी आज बिनचेहऱ्याच्या झुंडी या शिक्षित लोकांच्यातनं सुद्धा तयार केल्या जात आहेत. अ माइंडलेस फॉलोइंग ऑफ सम काइंड ऑफ फेसलेस लीडरशिप असं आपल्याला आज दिसतंय. आणि ही फेसलेस लीडरशिप पण विशिष्ट एजेंडा पुढे ढकलतीये. ज्या प्रकारची भांडवलशाही आज आपल्याकडे येते, आपण एक पापणी फडकवेपर्यंत आज खाणींचे करार होत आहेत, मोठी मोठी जंगलं साफ होत आहेत, हायवे, फास्टर हायवे, बुलेट ट्रेन असं म्हणणं सोपं आहे, पण एंडेंजर्ड आदिवासी कम्युनिटीज आर ऍक्च्युअली स्टँडिंग द रिस्क ऑफ बीइंग वाइप्ड आउट इन इंडिया टुडे. आणि फुले ज्या प्रकारे फॉरेस्ट ऍक्ट वरनं ब्रिटिश सरकारला धारेवर धरत होते, निर्भीडपणे प्रश्न विचारत होते परकीय शासन असताना, ते करणारे सामाजिक विचारक आज प्राध्यापकांमधनं दुर्दैवानी आपल्याला पुढे येताना दिसत नाहीयेत. फील्ड ऑफ इकॉनॉमिक्स, फील्ड ऑफ अँथ्रोपॉलॉजी, फील्ड ऑफ सोशॉलॉजी, यू डोंट फाइंड दॅट काइंड ऑफ स्टडीज कमिंग फॉरवर्ड. आज इंडॉलॉजी आणि आर्किओलॉजी पण पॉलिटिसाइज झालेले आहेत. त्यामुळे इतिहास नक्की कोणाचा, शास्त्रशुद्ध निकष बाजूला सारून काही एक बहुसंख्यांनी घेतलेले निर्णय हाच इतिहास आपण मानू लागलेलो आहोत. मेजॉरिटी विल डिसाइड व्हॉट इज हिस्ट्री, मेजॉरिटी विल डिसाइड व्हॉट इज इकॉनॉमिक डेव्हलपमेंट, मेजॉरिटी विल डिसाइड व्हॉट इज सोशल वेलबिईंग. अशा एका झुंडीच्या दबावाखाली, प्रभावाखाली आपण आलेलो आहोत. अँड आय डोंट थिंक this is something which is desirable for the kind of India that Mahatma Phule dreamt of and envisaged in his own life, in his own works, and in his own writings. I would also like to remind you, Phulyanchi tattva kai hoti. Phule believed in freedom. Phule believed in equality. Phule believed in justice. And Phule believed in friendship. फातिमा बी आणि सावित्रीची मैत्री इतकी घट्ट होती. They were not just colleagues, and this is especially for my male and female colleagues from the academia that I want to particularly highlight right now. We all know that one fine night when Mahatma Phule and his wife were asked to leave the house, were forced to leave their own house because they were actively educating the Stri Shudra Ati Shudras. Who gave them shelter? We all know that it was none other than Fatima B's own uncle. Fatima Binच्या जवळच्या ह्या नात्यामुळे अर्ध्या रात्री सुद्धा शेल्टर मिळालाय. How many of us in the academia today are really supporting each other in the true sense of the term is my question for all of us. So I would end by saying that decolonizing knowledge is not just about curricula, not just about theories and rewriting theories and concepts, but decolonizing knowledge is also about changing our practices in an egalitarian, just and responsible manner, so that we truly support each other and walk the future of egalitarianism, justice, sustainability together. I thank Dr. Manisha Karane, Director of the Center, for considering me worthy of giving this very prestigious lecture. I thank the Dean, Professor Kharat, for also getting very involved in the program, discussing the details with me. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to listening to Professor Aloni. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now invite Professor Aloni for his presidential remarks. But before that, let me tell you that why we were looking forward to your lecture. तुम्ही तुमच्या या व्याख्यानामध्ये सुरुवातीला ज्योतिबा फुले, महात्मा ज्योतिबा फुले यांचं स्त्री, शूद्र आणि अतिशूद्र यांच्या समस्या आणि त्यावर केलेलं कार्य यांची ओळख करून देताना, यांची आम्हाला पुन्हा ओळख करून देताना त्यांचं बहुआयामी व्यक्तिमत्व आणि ते कसे क्रांतिकारी विचारांचे होते हे सांगताना शेवटाला येताना जे डिकॉलनायझिंग एज्युकेशन आणि नॉलेज पर्टिक्युलरली आणि त्यांचा आजच्या महात्मा फुलेंच्या विचारांचा आजच्या विद्यार्थ्यांसाठी, प्राध्यापकांसाठी जो रेलेव्हन्स आहे तो जो हायलाइट केला त्याच्याबद्दल थँक्यू सो मच. नाव आय रिक्वेस्ट प्रोफेसर अलोनी टू गिव्ह हिज प्रेसिडेन्शियल रिमार्क्स. थँक्यू सो मच.
Thank you, Professor Manisha, and thanks, Professor Shruti. It was really pleasure listening to you and opening up many ideas. At the outset, I would say that the project of, like, the post-colonials, the ways in which the post-colonial discourse are being advocated and the ways in which they are disseminated in the academic world and in the knowledge production process. As if it is a, what is happening? So it is being done as if it is a Shabda Pramanya. I would like to use the word Shabda Pramanya. And it is because of this nature of Shabda Pramanya, we all the time gets subjugated and our minds get so much enclosed that we do not think beyond that. And that is why I always find it very problematic when people in India claim that they are working in theory. And when I ask them, or I always have this curiosity, I said, if you're working in theory, working in contemporary theory, and so on and so forth, then what theory you have produced? I would like to get educated, because I have a very different things. Like, when I understand theory, I make it very clear that it is something like producing a key, and that has a universal application. Say, for example, for me, Pratyuta Samutpad is a key, or Marx-Bayesian superstructure is a key. Knowledge and power is not a key, it is a critical framework. And one has to understand that how Mahatma Phule was the one who has evolved this critical framework of knowledge and power in colonial India. And the post-colonialist, the claim post-colonialist never ever acknowledge this particular fact, and also would not like to learn from what Mahatma Phule had advocated. And there is another problem when the claims of theories are being made. And when I ask, okay, fine, what theory you have produced? I don't see anybody coming forward and accepting that challenge that they have produced this theory. What they are doing is a theorization. And theorization of what and on whom? Theorization is a reductive urge which thrives on derivation. So we are engaged in derivation. And it is because of that, there is a constant process of colonization or the knowledge production process that gets so much ghettoized. And though it is a fact that the postmodern philosophy does not accept presupposition, the idea of presupposition, but at the same time, the Indian so-called postmodernists have not been able to dismantle their own presuppositions and have used their presuppositions in their every writing practices, as well as creating a pedagogy where there is absolutely no relevance for likes of Phule and Ambedkar in India. This is a crime. The claims of postmodernity is so problematic. They have not been able to dismantle their own presuppositions. They have not been able to dismantle their own normatives. And they are calling themselves as postmodernists. What they are doing or what they are practicing is nothing but Vedantic under the garb of postmodernism. And Dr. Shruti has pointed out it very clearly. When you are talking about this whole project of decolonization, like Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak says that decolonization is a self-congratulatory project. She is very true that it is a self-congratulatory project. And when you are talking about the Indic knowledge, Shruti was very right in pointing out this whole problem of homogeneity of tradition and the knowledge production process. When you are talking about the Indic one, which tradition you are talking about? The ways in which she has pointed out the knowledge construction process and the sociology of knowledge in Mahatma Phule's writings. And how do we learn that inclusivism and the multiculturalism and the pluralism? That kind of a pluralism doesn't exist when people say that we have to build our Indic knowledge process. And the Indic knowledge process is not a unilinear process. It has always been multilinear. And Shruti has pointed out very clearly that how you do it. You have so many people. You have Charvakas, you have Buddhists, you have Jains, you have so many people. You have Christians, you have Muslims. So it is all the multiculturalism that gets addressed. And imagine in colonial India, Mahatma Phule was addressing those issues, which today you are taking it as a part of your cultural pride, but at the same time, as a part of intellectual pursuits, what you are producing is nothing but the theorization which thrives on derivation, and what you're producing is simply derivated versions. And that is also the reason why Baba Sahib would say that India has not produced Voltaire. By this way of mechanism, you really cannot produce a thinking brain. And why there is this whole the fundamental issue is so much of writings are being done, we are doing researches, but why it is not creating enabling process? And this is very true, and this is very, very important in order to understand different personas. Say, for example, in Maharashtra, what Mahatma Phule points out about this whole myth of Vaman and Badi Raja, is all about the nature of strategies of exploitation and the ways in which one can really understand certain kind of a nature of historicity through these myths. That is an idea. You see, that is an idea. And in the post-Phule period, and predominantly in the post-Ambedkarite phase in Maharashtra, it has been taken as something like a historical reality, and people started excavating the whole myth of Badi Raja. But the problem is, like, how do you place Badi Raja? Where was his kingdom? What is the chronology of Badi Raja? These are the fundamental problems. You cannot take myth as a history all the time. But at the same time, the use of myth as a part of reconstructing historical narrative and understanding hegemonies in India is very important, which was first started by Mahatma Phule, which gets later carried on by Dr. Ambedkar in a very nuanced way, in a very different manner, and in a multicultural context. And therefore, when you talk about the Indic one, so you have a lot of medicinal practices in India. You go to any place, like every block has this nuksa of diabetes. If you just go and see around everywhere in India. Not necessary that it will work for all kinds of diabetes, but you have many such things. Jivak was one person whose life is mentioned in the Vinay Pitak. Why would the Buddhists do that? What was the necessity? Do you find the life of a physician in ancient India in any other textual tradition other than the Vinay Pitak? So if you are talking about the Indic knowledge system, then certainly what you are advocating in the present day context is all about the Brahmanical ways of knowledge system, and the project homogeneity is such a problematic thing. And Shruti has beautifully analyzed this whole politics of project homogeneity, of tradition and of history, which are very extreme. I mean, these are the crooked, these are the product of crooked mindset. And then how you legitimize that? So you legitimize by the brutality of power, and that is why she said that there are faceless leaders and the faceless people who are carrying that agenda. So what you are doing is exactly the prasarak kind of a things, but not the vicharak. They don't want vicharak. There are contradictions, and these contradictions needs to be addressed. Mahatma Phule, as Shruti has pointed out, that he was addressing the peasants, the issue of peasants, the issues of labor, the issues of women, and his writings are so important. Tell me any persona in the 19th century of India whose writings can tell you the social realities. All were involved in creating and writing the Vedantic metaphysics, or thinking about opposition to colonial power by way of reinventing the Brahmanical system as a great system, as a makers of the tradition, and so on and so forth. And therefore this becomes extremely problematic. And then the other point is that of the whole idea of sacred and divine. How this idea of sacred and divine becomes so problematic, even in the present day context. The claim knowledge society of this, or educated population of India, they clapped, banged talis to drive away corona. Corona जाने के लिए ताली बजाओ थाली बजाओ. एज्युकेटेड लोक आणि चांगल्या फ्लॅट्स मध्ये राहणारे आणि काय काय वानरवैद्यता करणारे जे काही आहेत ते एवढे एज्युकेटेड की हा वानरवैद्यता कसा सुचतो त्यांना कळत नाही. You don't think, you don't read, you even don't have the sense of thinking, or how even in the sociological sphere, likes, there are people who have written on caste without even considering Ambedkar's contribution, without considering Mahatma Phule's contribution. And then there are also people who claim that caste is a colonial construct. This is an outright insaneness. The post-colonial frameworks and the post-colonialists have produced. And these nonsensical things are being analyzed and getting legitimized as a part of the decolonization project. And Shruti has rightfully pointed out this methodological problem in understanding what is this decolonization. How do you really address the issue of decolonization? You want to address the issue of decolonization by return to the tradition or return to antiquities. As Baba Sahib has said, as remarked in that Gokhale Institute lecture. And then the so-called majority in India, which decides what knowledge should be there, they are not numerical majority. They are the numerical minority, and they are at the helm of the affairs. The claim sociologists in India have not analyzed the psychotic perversions that are being practiced by the Indian society. It's an outright shame. And therefore, the knowledge that is being produced by all these people has not been able to produce any kind of an enabling process. When I read Phule, I get that enabling process. When I read Baba Sahib, I get that enabling process. Why reading all these people, including the field of political science, including the field of social sciences, why we do not get that enabling process? And this enabling process is a process of transformation. So you do not get any enabling process. And therefore, what Dr. Shruti has pointed out are the very two important things, justice and Maitri. And how Mahatma Phule was constantly concerned about this justice and Maitri. And even his engagement with Dayananda Saraswati and making all kinds of protection. And even Dayananda Saraswati was also was to a certain extent patronized by even Shauji Maharaj and all. You do have a different inclusivity in the state of Maharashtra. And that inclusiveness somehow getting eroded every time with this domination of the claim knowledge production process under the rubric of Indic. And the rubric of Indic is nothing but revivalism. And revivalism of what? What colonial India produced is revivalism, Punarutthan. Whose Punarutthan? And why one should celebrate those things? So the India has produced, these are very overarching problems. And what I have always maintained that there are three important things which India has done. One is that India is a fantastic labor supply country. And imagine the issue of labor and the pain of a labor and exploitation of labor was first gets articulated by Mahatma Phule in colonial India. He did not read Marx. For that, you don't require Marx. As simple as this. The economic exploitation and the systemic exploitation through the administrative means and by enactment of the laws, how it is displacing the aboriginals of the country. This first gets addressed by Mahatma. And Shruti has beautifully started analyzing from then and then coming to this whole idea of digital divide. And the digital divide in the country operates at multiple levels. The whole issue of globalization, neo-globalization or neo-liberalization and all those things. But who are the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries has always been the caste Hindus in India. The caste Hindu discourse and the psychotic perversion practices of the caste Hindu society never ever get addressed in the academic domain and otherwise also in the public domain. Or even for that matter, the ways in which like Ajeya Bharat or Arya Bharat and many of those books which are being written in Marathi these days, they are all product of anti-Phule Ambedkar syndrome. And Shruti has pointed out so pertinently that this kind of a project homogeneity is a device, is a disaster in waiting to demolish all our democratic norms and the transformation which we all aspire for to make our nation a healthy and a powerful nation. So the one is that of India producing a labor supply, is a fantastic labor supply country. Second thing which India has achieved is Mithyavadi Sanskriti. And this Mithyavad is constantly attacked by Mahatma Phule. And the third which India has produced is Vitambhanavadi Sanskriti. You just take anyone and do all kinds of things. And Shruti has pointed out how the mob psychosis works. It is so unfortunate. Rather, it is the most insane that people, the so-called people who analyze violence, would like to analyze violence under the rubric of Freudian subconsciousness, which is a bizarre. Violence is a conscious act. It cannot be analyzed through subconsciousness. And there are parameters. And there is a legitimization process. So this whole, reasserting, re-exploring Shivaji and the ways in which Shivaji gets explored by Mahatma Phule, and it is so sad that there is a problem. Like there is a Udattikaran. There somebody has written Shivaji che Udattikaran in Marathi. How do you address this kind of the extreme romantic elogization of past? One should learn from the past and not elogizing past. It is very important. You have to learn and then move forward, go ahead, and create an enabling process. And neither you find that neither a Sushruta Samhita or Charaka Samhita, though they are medicinal text, but it does not describe Jiva. It does not describe the life of many people. And it constantly advocates that the Dhanvantari is an originator of Ayurveda. How can it be? And this is where Shruti has raised this question of our own knowledge system. That knowledge system also needs to be brought under the modern sciences. And it has to test the testimony of the modern sciences. Though India has a very important theoretical tool of Pratita Samutpad, which is also a backbone of the scientific investigations and the basis of the scientific theories. But India failed to produce modern sciences. This also we need to understand. And therefore, the whole syndrome of given and the whole syndrome of divine and sacred. Rather, this whole the syndrome of divine and sacred, Mahatma Phule was the first one to address, not directly, but very much indirectly. And Dr. Ambedkar addressed it very directly. And these are the and therefore there is this whole different realms of analytical frameworks which both these personas have created. And there is one also notices that the earthiness which you find in Mahatma Phule's writings, that earthiness, the post-colonialist in India and the post-colonial sociologist and the culturalist completely failed to recognize that earthiness. They completely bypassed Mahatma Phule. They would eulogize Gandhi, but they will never look back or they will never look into Mahatma Phule's writings. Or even for that matter, when the Women in India is written, what's his name? Somebody who produced a book from Berkeley. No reference to Savitribai Phule. Can you imagine? No reference to Savitribai Phule. This is a shame. These are the perverted mindsets, and that perverted mindsets are always hegemonic in nature, and they will never ever make you conscious, and they will ever never empower you to analyze the psychotic perversions which are being practiced in the society. So there are. I thought I can put those certain things in a nutshell, in certain theoretical frameworks. And I enjoyed Shruti's lecture, and I hope we will have a continuation of the dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your elaborative comments and giving us the analytical framework for Shruti ma'am's lecture. I don't know, I'm so impressed, and this is the way I feel is to celebrate Mahatma Phule's thoughts. And one thing which I would like to add over here is we are living in this polarized world. There is more and more polarization that is happening. It's only reading of Mahatma Phule or whatever thoughts he has left for us will lead our students and our community for the towards a society which is more inclusive, more multiculturalism, and there's more and more plurality that is accepted. So thank you so much. Now for formal vote of thanks, let me invite Mahesh Narodekar, who is a faculty.
Manisha, if suppose some participants have any question to Shruti.
Yeah, sure, sir. I thought that Shruti ma'am has another lecture. So I don't know whether we can have that kind of time. So if she permits and so you permit, we can certainly ask.
Yeah, at least take 2-3 questions and somebody has some questions.
So let's.
Shruti is saying yes, she's nodding her head in positive manner.
Yeah, then it is absolutely fine, sir. You to give us time, and that's really great. So in the audience, if anybody has any comments or questions to ask, then I invite them. You can just raise your hand and start your question. Professor Kharat, if you have any comment to make, please. Pradeep, would you like to ask something or add something? Anyone?
Can I ask madam? Can I ask?
Yeah, please. Please identify yourself.
I'm Shirsat, Jagannath Shirsat.
Please, quickly you can ask your question.
Yes, madam. My general question is that we Ambedkarite people all Buddhist people are remembering this day very thoroughly, and but these own people, OBC people, are not remembering what is the reason behind this. There are so many friends, but they send me other good morning and other things on my WhatsApp, but they don't remember this day. Why?
Shruti ma'am.
Dear Chair, can I answer?
Yeah, please, Shruti.
That's what I was talking about. Total fragmentation of communities under the garb of identities. That is one. And two, we know that right now with globalization, identity has become a toy. So even Phule is not very convenient to remember to many people. I don't know whether you are aware, but the number of temples that were constructed after 1990 is at least 100 times more than the temples in old orthodox pre-colonial times or the colonial times also. Because today religion is a popular industry. You must read Meera Nanda's book, The God's Market, which in fact explains to you why and how it is happening. City after city, Ramdas Swami Paduka Mandal, Ganpati Atharva Shirsha Mandal. So women from Bahujan castes and non-Ambedkarite SCs are mobilized at foot soldiers in a particular manner since 1990. And unfortunately, many people whom we knew as Ambedkarites have also joined the camps by crossing over very quickly. We know in the last 10 years what has happened. So from very surprising corners, I am receiving Ram Navami Shubhecha also. Or on Ram Mandir construction also, I am receiving certain memes. So this crossing over is also part of the, I should say, a very perverse dominance of electoral majoritarianism, controlling our entire socio-cultural intellectual discourse today. And that voting politics, that majoritarian politics is now a shameless entity. People are not ashamed to do things. Earlier, people were ashamed to do something which was against their values and ideology. Today, there is a very shameless assertion that yes, we have changed our opinions, people would say. And how can this be possible? And you will find it is a combination of, on the one hand, aggressive neoliberalism, which gives you a false feeling of you being a free individual with choice. Whereas the so-called choice is given by the market and given by the neoliberal government. There's no choice as a free human being, free autonomous human being. But you are given that false feeling all the time. That's one. Secondly, I reiterate, in the pattern of capitalist global state today, digital medium is being used as a weapon to fragment the social identities and communities. So that space to think out is now taken away. You must have heard that the OTT platform owners are saying that human sleep is our biggest enemy. And we will fight that enemy. People who don't have permanent jobs, people who don't even sleep, who are sleep deprived with too much of access to internet oriented education, and people who do not read at all. That's a potent combination we are faced with. And this kind of person is mindlessly forwarding all kinds of messages without ever thinking of values, ideology, ideals, and any utopia for a good future. See, Phule is different because he had a utopia, and that utopia was extremely inclusive and based on justice. And today you don't find those kinds of leaders around you except a few, except a very few. Secondly, I feel we as educated upper middle class and middle class have stopped drawing our inspiration from the Mukta Salves and the Tarabai Shindes around us. We do have Mukta Salves and Tarabai Shindes around you and me. We do have peasants who are in very bad condition. But Mahatma Phule considered it extremely important to draw his inspiration from them and theorize about future. We have lost that empathy, we have lost that commitment, and we have lost the skill to be able to theorize from the ground. As Professor Aloni rightly pointed out, we take pride in copy pasting Western paradigms of some fancy edition, you know. So today it could be postmodernism, tomorrow it could be post-colonialism. Some fancy edition of Western theory we are busy copy pasting. And that's why this grounded understanding and empathetic understanding is really missing today. That's why I think. And the Bahujans, the OBCs have been made into very radical foot soldiers of today's market fundamentalism and religious fundamentalism both. There is fundamentalism of the market also today, controlling your mind and my mind. कोणते accessories घातले पाहिजेत, कसं दिसलं पाहिजे, कसं बोललं पाहिजे, आपली घरं कशी सजवली पाहिजेत. शॉकिंग आहे की आज दलित बहुजन आणि नॉन बहुजन म्हणजे सवर्ण यांच्या कोणाच्या घरामध्ये तुम्हाला पुस्तकं दिसतात सांगा. आणि आपण महात्मा फुले आणि डॉक्टर आंबेडकरांविषयी बोलतोय जे अर्धपोटी राहून ज्ञान साधना करत होते. आणि आज आपण काय करतोय सर, तुम्ही म्हणाला ते खरं आहे, फॉरवर्ड करतो फक्त महात्मा फुले जयंतीच्या शुभेच्छा एवढंच करतोय आपण, किंवा डॉक्टर आंबेडकर जयंतीच्या शुभेच्छा, जे म्हणजे people choose their own icons, but beyond that depth we have really lost.
Well, I would also like to add, you know, this whole issue जो तुम्ही हे केलेला आहे. मी आणि एलिनार झेलिएट ज्यावेळेस फुलेवाड्यामध्ये गेलो होतो आणि आम्ही फुल्यांचे जे तिथे नातेवाईक होते त्यांच्याकडे गेलो, तर तुम्हाला म्हणजे यू विल गेट शॉक्ड. त्यांनी उत्तर काय दिलं होतं आम्हाला, या थेरड्यांनी आमच्यासाठी काय केलं. इमॅजिन रिलेटिव्स ऑफ महात्मा फुले स्पीकिंग इन दिस लँग्वेज, या थेरड्यांनी आमच्यासाठी काय केलं. अँड वी वेर शॉक्ड, बोथ मी अँड एलिनार वेर शॉक्ड. आता प्रश्न हा होतो ना की महाराष्ट्रामध्ये अस्पृश्यांनी महात्मा फुल्यांना पकडलं तर महात्मा फुले सुद्धा अस्पृश्य झाले बाकीच्यांसाठी. ही वस्तुस्थिती आहे आणि पूर्ण भारताची वस्तुस्थिती आहे. आणि 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 त्यातल्या त्यात म्हणजे मी असं म्हणेल की गांधीवाद जो आहे हा सिंगल मोस्ट कारणीभूत आहे. कारण पब्लिक स्पिअर मध्ये केवळ आणि केवळ गांधीवाद होता आणि गांधीवादाचे जे काही विश्व होतं ते सगळे पेरल्या गेले. आणि त्यामुळं महात्मा फुलांनी जी एक समाज परिवर्तनाची चळवळ सुरू केली होती, त्या पूर्ण समाज परिवर्तनेला नेस्तनाबूत केलं. आणि तेच म्हणजे पोस्ट इंडिपेंडन्स मध्ये सुद्धा झालेलं आहे आणि तेच तुम्हाला कंटिन्यू होते. म्हणजे काय होते आता, जर थोरांची ओळख जर पुस्तक पाहिलं आपण तर काय आहे, महात्मा फुले थोर समाज सुधारक, डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर काय आहे तर दलितांचे कैवारी. हे नॅरेटिव्ह कसं घडल्या जाते तर काय आहे की प्रस्थापित राजकीय पक्षांनी सुद्धा त्यांनी नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन जे आहे त्याच्यामध्ये कसं बाबा आंबेडकर आणि फुल्यांना नेहमीच थोपवून ठेवलेलं आहे नेहमीच. आणि ही परंपरा आणि ही पराकाष्ठा इतक्या जबरदस्त जोपासल्या जाते की त्यासाठी आंबेडकरवाद्यांना आंदोलन करावं लागलं महाराष्ट्रामध्ये. आणि तेव्हा कुठे विद्यापीठाच्या सिलेबसमध्ये फुले आणि आंबेडकर आले आणि बाकीच्या याच्यामध्ये फुले आंबेडकर आले. तर आणि परत एक सगळ्यात मोठी गोष्ट जी आहे की जी डॉक्टर श्रुतीने केलं की ज्या पद्धतीने तुमचं एक म्हणजे मंदिरे आले, ज्या पद्धतीने तुमचा जो एक तुमच्यामध्ये जो एक रिलिजियस कल्चरल कॉन्शियसनेस जो जागृत करण्यात आला, तो कोणत्या माध्यमातून करण्यात आला आणि कोणत्या नॅरेटिव्ह मधून करण्यात आला हे बघायला पाहिजे. आणि काय ते नॅरेटिव्ह कधी महात्मा फुलेंनी स्वीकारलं का? कधी बाबासाहेबांनी कधी ते नॅरेटिव्ह स्वीकारलं का? नाही स्वीकारलं. जेव्हा की रिडल इन हिंदुइझम जेव्हा पब्लिश झालं होतं, त्यावेळेस सगळेजण बाबासाहेबांच्या पुतळ्याची विटंबना करणारे आणि अदरवाईज असो बाबासाहेबांच्या पुतळ्याची विटंबना करणारे हे सगळे ओबीसी समाजाचेच होते. आणि बघा ना की काय आहे की तुम्ही विद्यापीठाला नावं देता. अरे कोणाची नावं देता भाई? जस्ट बिकॉज की राजेंद्र प्रसाद येतात आणि त्या आपलं काय यांचं नाव त्या नागपूरचे जे संत आहेत त्यांना म्हणतात की तुम्ही राष्ट्रसंत आहात आणि ते राष्ट्रसंत होऊन जातात तुकडोजी महाराज. आणि त्यांचं कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन काय आहे? का एज्युकेशन क्षेत्रामध्ये काय कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन आहे का? काही नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेसमध्ये कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन आहे का? आणि तुम्ही त्यांचे नावं जे आहेत ते विद्यापीठाला देतात. म्हणजे तुम्ही काय अभिप्रेत आहे? बस एवढंच कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन आहे की ही वॉज अ फाउंडिंग मेंबर ऑफ द विश्व हिंदू परिषद, फाउंडिंग वाईस प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ द विश्व हिंदू परिषद. दॅट इज हिज ओनली कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन. आणि यू आर एक्नॉलेजिंग दॅट. तर तुम्ही कोणाला हे करता? म्हणजे काय प्रकार आहे हा? तर जोपर्यंत ही जी मानसिकता आहे, ही मानसिकतेवरती जोपर्यंत आपण प्रहार करणार नाही, जोपर्यंत गुलामाला गुलामी का एहसास करो तभी वो जाग उठेगा. अदरवाईज तर ते अजूनही कळप मेंटॅलिटी जी आहे ती अजूनही आहे आणि अजूनही पुतळ्यांचे विटंबना होतात, अजूनही शिवीगाळ होते, अजूनही लोकांना मारले जाते. म्हणजे समाज जो आहे तो समाज काही थोर समाज होत नाही आहे आणि त्याच्यामध्ये कधी मोरॅलिटी आणि एथिकॅलिटी तर आणलीच नाही. मोरॅलिटी आणि एथिकॅलिटीचा प्रश्न उभे करणारे फक्त महात्मा फुले आणि डॉक्टर आंबेडकर होते. बाकी कोणी तर मोरॅलिटीचा प्रश्नच उभा नाही केला. तर तुमची मोरॅलिटी काय आहे? तर तुमची गांधी मोरॅलिटी आहे. तर गांधी मोरॅलिटीमध्ये तर सगळंच चालतंय ना. तुमची मोरॅलिटी काय आहे? तर तुमची ब्राह्मणिकल कल्चरल नॅशनलिझम आहे. तर त्या ब्राह्मणिकल कल्चरल नॅशनलिझम मध्ये सगळंच चालते तुम्ही म्हणून म्हटलं मी की विटंबनावादी संस्कृती जी आहे ती कशी एक जोपासल्या जाते आणि ती जी आहे ती कॉलोनियल पिरियड पासून जोपासल्या जाते. त्याच्या आधीपासून सुद्धा जोपासल्या जात होती आणि ती पोस्ट कॉलोनियल पिरियड मध्ये सुद्धा ती कायम राहते आणि आताही पोस्ट लिबरल पिरियड मध्ये सुद्धा ती कायम आहे आणि ती जास्त प्रखर होते. त्या प्रखरतेचे जे कारण आहे ते प्रखरतेचे कारण म्हणजे तुमचा जो म्हणजे काय म्हणतात त्याला काही समाजांमध्ये ती जी म्हणजे दैववादी परंपरा इतकी जबरदस्त रुतलेली आहे की त्या दैववादी परंपरेच्या बाहेर ते निघू इच्छित नाही, बघू इच्छित नाही. आणि म्हणूनच जेव्हा रॅशनलिस्ट मुवमेंट सुरू होते महाराष्ट्रामध्ये किंवा ते जे सगळे जे अंधश्रद्धा निर्मूलन समितीची जी काही सुरू होते त्यावेळेस जेव्हा त्या लोकांना हे कळते की बा असे कोण व्यक्ती आहेत की हे सगळे याच्या अगेन्स्ट मध्ये बोलत होते, तर तुम्हाला दोनच व्यक्ती मिळतात, महात्मा फुले आणि डॉक्टर आंबेडकर. बाकी कोणी मिळतच नाही तुम्हाला. आणि म्हणून ते बोलायला लागतात त्याच्याबद्दल. पण ते बोलूनही सामान्यामध्ये तो जो राग आहे ना म्हणजे द्वेष हा इतका रुतलेला आहे की काही विचारता सोय नाही. हिंदूनेस इज ऑल अबाउट hate, anger, violence. Hate, anger, violence. These are the typical characteristics of the caste Hinduness. And I don't see distinction between Hinduness and Hindu and Hindutva. These are the same thing. You let people who talk about Hindutva come forward and say and proclaim that we do not believe in hate, anger, and violence, and that we will not practice hate, anger, and violence. It is their job. It is their call, and unless until you shake that consciousness, I don't think it will come. And in the academic institution, we should try that process as much as we can. That becomes our responsibility. Yeah.
Thank you all.
या आणखी कोणाला प्रश्न असतील का?
येस मॅम.
क्विकली.
हॅलो.
येस, क्विकली यू आस्क.
ओके. माझा प्रश्न अलोने सरांना आहे. अलोने सरांनी जे सांगितलं की लोकांना जागृत करणं खूप महत्वाचं आहे, त्यातल्या त्यात मला असं विचारायचं आहे की जी भारतामध्ये जी शाहू फुले आंबेडकर ही वैचारिक परंपरा आहे ती लाईक आपण ती फक्त करिक्युलम मधनं आता शिकतोय, बरोबर, परंतु अजूनही म्हणजे तुम्हाला याबद्दल काय वाटतं की अजूनही भारतीय लोकांमध्ये जी जितक्या प्रमाणामध्ये एक मॅच्युरिटी किंवा एक परिपक्वता असायला हवी की जे आपण इम्प्लिमेंटेशन मधनं किंवा कृतीमधनं आपण ही विचारसरणी अवलंबणं जितकं गरजेचं आहे तितकं आता भारतामध्ये किंवा सोशो कल्चरल लाईफ मध्ये आपल्या इंडियाच्या हे राबवलं जातंय का?
बघा काय आहे ना की आपण वाचतो फुले परंपरा काय आहे, आंबेडकर परंपरा काय आहे. आता जसं श्रुती मॅडमचं जे लेक्चर होतं की बा त्याचं कंटेम्पररी रिलेव्हन्स काय आहे, हे जे कंटेम्पररी रिलेव्हन्स असते हे महत्वाचं असते. आणि ते म्हणजे एक क्रिटिकल फ्रेमवर्क मध्ये तुम्ही कसं बघता आणि त्याला कसं पुढे घेऊन जाऊ शकता याला जास्त महत्व आहे. म्हणजे जसं उदाहरणार्थ सांगतो तुम्हाला की म्हणजे ते शाहू फुले आंबेडकर परंपरा असं म्हणणे आणि त्या परंपरेचे क्रिटिकल फ्रेमवर्क बनवणे हे या दोन गोष्टी आहेत, या वेगळ्या वेगळ्या गोष्टी आहेत.
येस.
जसं उदाहरणार्थ बाबासाहेब म्हणतात की म्हणजे महात्मा फुल्यांचं नॉलेज अँड पॉवर विच इज व्हेरी गुड, फॅन्टॅस्टिक. बाबासाहेब म्हणतात की रूल्स अँड प्रिन्सिपल्स हे जे डिस्टिंक्शन आहे त्या रूल्स आणि प्रिन्सिपल एक क्रिटिकल फ्रेमवर्क जेव्हा देतात तर आपण त्या रूल्स आणि प्रिन्सिपल्स वरच्या अनुषंगाने आपण समाजाचं विश्लेषण करतो का, हे महत्वाचं आहे. म्हणजे काय आहे की केवळ आणि केवळ अत्याचार फक्त अनालिसिस न करता बाकीच्या गोष्टी सुद्धा तुम्ही अनालिसिस करा या बेसिस वरती की तुमचे कल्चरल पॅरामीटर्स काय आहेत, त्याचे प्रिन्सिपल्स काय आहेत आणि त्याचे रूल्स काय आहेत आणि त्या अनुषंगाने ते कसं ऑपरेट होते. एक हे झालं. एक तिसरं सांगतो तुम्हाला, म्हणजे एक मी स्वतःच उदाहरण म्हणजे एक परत एक सांगतो की what are the tools you have in order to get that power. The only theoretical tool you have in India which has been the most powerful and the potent tool is that of the theory of pratita samutpad. There is no any other theoretical tool that can empower you to think differently and get into microanalysis and create those categories. As simple as this. This is a very simple logic, and I have been practicing that. If I'm talking about protected ignorance, I don't say that it is something like it is a new theory or I have evolved any new theory. I don't claim that. I say it as a critical framework which is based on theory of pratita samutpad. So when I say that, like, what is protected ignorance? For me, it is very simple. की रॅशनॅलिटी काय आहे, रॅशनॅलिटी तुम्ही काय म्हणता, तर फिलॉसॉफर्स म्हणतात रॅशनॅलिटी रिलेटिव्ह आहे. बिलकुल रिलेटिव्ह आहे. रॅशनॅलिटी इज रिलेटिव्ह आहे, ते मला सुद्धा स्वीकारण आहे की रॅशनॅलिटी रिलेटिव्ह आहे. पण त्याची रिलेटिव्हनेस जी आहे इट डिपेंड्स ऑन इट्स ऑब्जेक्टिव्ह. इफ द ऑब्जेक्टिव्ह ऑफ रॅशनॅलिटी इज टू वॉर्ड ऑफ इग्नोरन्स, इट बिकम्स अ रायटियस रॅशनॅलिटी. And if the objective of the rationality is not to ward off ignorance, it becomes unrighteous rationality, and therefore it becomes protected ignorance, because it is not aimed at killing ignorance. It is aimed at maintaining those ignorances. आणि त्या हिशोबाने बघा की आतापर्यंत जे काही नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस झालेला आहे विद्यापीठामध्ये, मग ते PhDs असो, पुस्तकं असो, त्याच्यामध्ये खरोखरच ते आहे का? Or are you going to be part of that protected ignorance, or you want to dismantle that protected ignorance? Similarly, I give you another example की म्हणजे जेव्हा तुम्ही बाबासाहेबांची गोष्ट करता तर बाबासाहेब 1900 जेव्हा ते 35 मध्ये अनालिसिस ऑफ कास्ट लिहितात त्यावेळेस ते सरळ म्हणतात नथिंग इज परमनंट, एव्हरीथिंग इज चेंजिंग. आणि जेव्हा 1955 मध्ये ते लिहितात त्यावेळेस परत ते लिहितात की नथिंग इज परमनंट, एव्हरीथिंग इज चेंजिंग. being is becoming. आज आपण बिईंग इज बिकमिंग हा जो संकल्प, ही जी संकल्पना आहे त्या डलूसच्या हिशोबाने बघतो, जे 90s मध्ये लिहिलेलं आहे. बाबासाहेबांनी 1955 ला सांगितलं, पण आपण ती हे करतो का, ती बघतो का? हे जे थेरॉटिकल टूल्स आहेत किंवा जे एक जे एक्सप्लॉयटेशन मेकॅनिझम आणि कंट्रोल, तर काय आहे की बाबासाहेब हॅज कॉन्सेप्च्युअलाइज स्टेट ॲज अ एजन्सी, and then how you build those institutions in order to distribute equality. And are we really analyzing the functioning of those institutions in terms of the economic well-being or in terms of the social well-being? These are multiple parameters through which you can analyze. That does not mean that you should reject completely the Western knowledge methods and all those things. No. What I'm saying is that की तुम्ही त्याला कसं स्वीकारता आणि त्यांनी तुमच्याकडे जो दृष्टिकोन जो महात्मा फुलांनी आणि बाबासाहेबांनी दिलेला आहे, तर त्याला तुम्ही कसं वापरता हे सुद्धा तेवढंच महत्वाचं आहे. आणि ते जर नाही केलं तर मग ते आपण नेहमीच असं होते की म्हणजे ते महान होते, ते फार चांगले होते, ते असे होते, ते तसे होते, याच्या पुढे मग ते नॅरेशन जात नाही. तर काय आहे ना की काही जनसामान्यामध्ये जे नॅरेशन उभं करायचं आहे ते वेगळं असते, अकॅडमिक वर्ल्डमध्ये जे नॅरेशन उभं करायचं आहे ते वेगळं असं आहे. दोन वेगळ्या वेगळ्या गोष्टी असतात आणि त्या आपण कटाक्षाने पाळल्या पाहिजे. आणि 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 दुसरं एक महत्वाची गोष्ट मी तुम्हाला सांगू इच्छितो की हा जो एक नथिंग इज परमनंट वाला जे आहे, हे लॉजिक काय आहे? It's a Buddhist logic, which is nothing but the theory of pratita samutpad. So imagine how he is using those kind of important things in order to analyze the phenomenon. Are we doing it today? That is why I quoted this example, that the violence is being analyzed as a part of subconscious, which is very wrong, which is totally nonsense. It is a conscious manifestation, and then you should analyze the consciousness process in the society itself. So these are the things I think it is better that we strategize ourselves very, and you need to have that kind of a level of engagement. That is also equally true. You just cannot bypass that. When I specifically pointed out this post-colonial, these things, precisely because what is post-colonial? Can you define post-colonial? You cannot define post-colonial. The whole idea of alienation, which Homi Baba talks about, these are all nonsensical ideas. The hybridity is another nonsensical idea. See, Shruti has so beautifully analyzed this whole nature of hybridity, which Mahatma Phule talks about. These are very important examples in order to present the critique and challenge these discourses. If you don't challenge the discourses, if you don't challenge the narratives, it will remain. And you cannot have ghettoized narrative all the time. You have to change the language, you have to change parameters, and these are some of the political strategies. And for that, you need to have a deep engagement with philosophy, with culture, with your own disciplinary paradigms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So with your permission, should we close now or should we take some more questions?
No, it's up to you. It's up to Shruti.
No.
She has to address
I am
questions.
We can close now because we had a fairly good discussion in the question
Yeah.
answer.
In fact, both the questions, first question itself was so complicated and both of you have answered it so well. So I think our students will benefit from this lecture and it will be available on the YouTube. So it is a good learning resource for all of us. We will keep interacting with you. And thank you so much, Shruti ma'am and Aluni sir, for your interactions with us. And I now invite Mahesh to give formal vote of thanks. Mahesh.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to express the vote of thanks. On the behalf of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar International Research Center, University of Mumbai, I am glad to be here to express official vote of thanks So first of all, I thank to our chief guest, Professor Shruti Tambe, for accepting our invitation and being with us here today to share enriching thoughts with us. Next, thank to our chairperson, Professor Y.S. Alone, for accepting our invitation and sharing insightful thoughts. And also thanks to Dean Sir, Professor Rajesh Kharat, Sir. Also thanks to our supportive office administrative staff, UCC, for providing us technical facilities. With this, also thanks to respected professors and students of different departments and all others who have joined with us in today's session. Thank you. That's all, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
so much,
Thanks for
both
giving
of
me
you
an
once
opportunity
again.
to have this kind of a dialogue with Dr. Shruti.
Our pleasure. Yeah, this I should have told Shruti ma'am that when I told sir that we are looking forward to have interactions with you and have your remarks. He said that, sorry, he said that he's looking forward to Shruti ma'am's lecture. So I think we have benefited a lot from both of your lectures here.
I have learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll keep interacting in future also. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thanks to everyone once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we'll come back to you. So you are muted now.
No, you have to remove me as host. Then only then I can leave.
Okay, that our technical team will do it. Sorry for that. We have already taken so much of your time. Thank you.
No, it's okay. I mean, I can end the meeting. Shall I end the meeting?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, we will.
Yes,
Anyway.
please, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a
Yes,
lot.
I am
Thank
ending
you.
the meeting now. Okay.
Yeah.